A man who spent 32 years building something with his hands doesn't lose his temper when someone tries to take it apart with words. He goes quiet. And on the morning, my daughter stood up from my own Thanksgiving table and told me I had spent her entire life making her feel small. I didn't say a single thing for a full 10 seconds. I just picked up my coffee mug, set it down on the coaster where it always goes, and told her the only thing that needed saying. Then I sat back down and watched the whole house of cards she and her boyfriend had built start to fall. Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Third Thursday in November. My wife Irene had been in the kitchen since 6 in the morning, and when I came downstairs, the house smelled the way a house should smell when it's working like it's supposed to. Turkey, butter, that particular warmth that has nothing to do with the thermostat. I've lived in this house for 24 years, paid it off in 19. I built my HVAC company out of one service van and a line of credit I sweated over for a decade, and every room in this house is on the other side of that. Irene was pulling a dish from the oven when she looked at me over her shoulder and said, "Try not to bring up the business today." I told her I wasn't planning to bring up anything. "I mean it, Leland. Just let Brooke enjoy the visit. I'm not the one who makes visits complicated." She gave me the look. After 31 years of marriage, I can read that look the way I read a service call report. Quickly, accurately, and with a full understanding of what's going to go wrong if I don't pay attention. My daughter and her boyfriend pulled into the driveway 40 minutes late. She drove. He rode shotgun with his elbow on the window frame like he was heading to a tailgate party, not somebody else's Thanksgiving. I'd met Trevor 3 times before this. Twice at our house, once at a restaurant in Nashville she picked. He sells digital marketing. Or he coaches people who sell digital marketing. Or he runs a community for people who want to learn how to coach people who sell digital marketing. I was never entirely clear on the distinction, and he never offered to clarify it in a way that led anywhere solid. My daughter kissed her mother first, then me, and said the table looked beautiful. She was right, it did. Trevor came in behind her and shook my hand and complimented the house in the way people do when they're already thinking about something else. We ate. It was fine. Irene carried most of the conversation the way she always does at these things. Graceful about it, making everyone feel comfortable. Moving the afternoon along the way, water moves around a stone. Trevor helped himself to a second plate before anyone else had reached for more. My daughter kept glancing at him. Not the nervous kind of glance. More like 2 people with a shared script who are watching each other for the right moment. I knew something was coming. I'm 61 years old, and I have sat across from a lot of people in a lot of rooms, and I know when a room has an agenda in it. Irene cleared the main dishes and brought out the pie. My daughter set her fork down, took a breath, and said she and Trevor had something they wanted to run by me. Trevor pulled out his phone. Actual slideshow on Thanksgiving. The opportunity, as he explained it with the energy of a man who has given this pitch many times, was a business system called FBA Mastery Circle. Amazon fulfillment, automated stores, passive income at scale. He and a business partner, a woman named Amber Sutherland he'd met through an online community, had already run 2 successful stores. Now they were accepting a limited number of capital partners to fund expansion into premium product categories. High entry point, he said, but significant returns. How much? I asked. My daughter said, $95,000. We'd need you to cover the full buy-in so Trevor and I can get in at the top tier. I sat with that number for a moment. That's not a buy-in, I said. That's a toll booth. Trevor kept smiling. He talked about Amazon's growth projections, third-party seller margins, a YouTube channel that had profiled Amber's system. He pulled up a screenshot of what he said was his own store's monthly revenue. The kind of screenshot that has a lot of dollar signs and no way to verify a single one of them. I asked if I could see the LLC paperwork. Trevor said the business entity was in the process of being restructured for tax purposes. I asked what Amber's last name was. He said, Sutherland, Amber Sutherland. I asked if there was a registered business address. My daughter said, Dad. Just the one word. The way she says it when she thinks I'm about to do the thing she expects me to do. I've heard that word said that way for probably 20 years, and I still don't have a satisfying answer for it. I've actually done some research on this, I said. I hadn't told her that. I'd spent the better part of 2 weeks looking into things quietly after Irene mentioned our daughter had called about A business opportunity Trevor was putting together. Irene had told me because she was worried. I hadn't asked her to tell me. But I'd grown up with a father who said yes to things before he understood what he was agreeing to. And I made myself a promise when I was 23 that I was not going to repeat that particular education. FBA Mastery Circle isn't registered with the Better Business Bureau. The address listed on the website is a UPS store in Scottsdale, Arizona. I found 3 separate complaints on the FTC consumer database from the last 14 months. All variations of the same story. Large upfront buy-in. A contact named Amber. No product ever shipped. No refunds issued. My daughter's face changed. Trevor stopped smiling. You checked up on him, my daughter said. Not a question. I did some homework, yes. She looked at Trevor, then back at me, and something moved through her face that I hadn't seen since she was 17, and I found out she'd wrecked her car and let a friend take the blame for a week before I discovered the damage. You never trust me. Her voice was low and tight. You have never once in my entire life just trusted me to know what I'm doing. That's not what this is, I said. You see me walk through the door, and you're already building the case against me. Against whatever I bring. Like there's nothing I could ever do that you wouldn't need to audit first. I'm trying to tell you this isn't real, I said. I can pull up the FTC database right now if you want to look at it together. That's not the point. She pushed back from the table. The point is that every single time I try to do something on my own, make my own choices, build something with someone I actually love, you make me feel like I'm 12 years old being corrected in front of company. Irene said her name once quietly. Trevor was very still. You know what the worst part is? My daughter's voice cracked and she looked at me directly across the table. You've made me spend my whole life apologizing for wanting things you didn't pre-approve. And I am so tired of it. I am so tired of sitting in this house feeling like the problem you're always managing. I let her finish. Then I said, I have never once thought of you as a problem, not for a single day. She shook her head. You've thought of every plan I've ever made as a problem. Every dream I've had that didn't come with your signature on it. She grabbed her coat off the back of the chair. I'm not doing this today. I'm not sitting here being cross-examined on Thanksgiving like I'm on trial for wanting a life that's actually mine. Then she said the thing. She said, you know what, Dad? I don't know what you get out of this, but I am 31 years old and you have made me feel less than my entire life. I'm done letting you do it. Trevor stood when she did. He put his hand on her back, not comforting. More like a man who knows the meeting is going the way he needed it to go and doesn't want to be the last one out the door. They left. Irene and I sat at the table with the pie and the good plates and the kind of quiet that settles after something loud, even when nothing loud was actually said. Welcome to Dad's Bold Revenge. Get comfortable, stay right here with me, because I need you to understand something before we go any further. The people in this story had every chance to step back, ask a real question, or just tell the truth. They chose otherwise. Hit that like button and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. I read every single one. You're going to want to see how this ends. Irene wanted me to call our daughter that same night. She's a better person than I am in most measurable ways, and she said the girl was upset and embarrassed, and had probably half regretted it before she hit the on-ramp. I told her to let it sit. You're not quick to forgive, she said. I'm exactly the forgiving type, I said. I just know you can't do it for them. She didn't push me. After 31 years, she knows what pushing gets her. Trevor posted something on Instagram that Sunday. I don't follow him, but my nephew showed me. A photo of him and my daughter at what looked like a hotel rooftop somewhere, captioned with something about protecting your energy and choosing people who pour into you instead of drain you. He didn't name me. He didn't have to. My daughter shared it to her own account. I didn't respond, didn't text, didn't ask Irene to intercede. I've dealt with vendors who ran that play on me before. Make noise. See if the silence makes you anxious enough to come to the table on their terms. It doesn't work on a man who knows how to wait. 6 weeks later, Irene told me our daughter had called her crying. Amber Sutherland had gone dark. The store build-out Trevor had been managing had produced 1 product listing and 0 sales in 4 months. The $95,000 was off the table because I'd said no. But my daughter had put in $18,000 of her own savings. Money she hadn't mentioned at Thanksgiving. Money she'd wired to Trevor the week before, because he'd said the opportunity had a closing window, and she'd wanted to show him she was committed. $18,000 gone. Trevor, for his part, was still posting on Instagram. My daughter asked Irene if she thought I would talk to her. I said yes, but she had to come to the house. She drove up on a Saturday morning in January, sat across from me at the same kitchen table where she'd put her coat on 2 months earlier. She looked like a woman who had not slept well in several weeks. She said she was sorry, said it plainly, without the kind of architecture people sometimes build around an apology to keep themselves protected while they're giving it. She said she'd been wrong about a lot of things, and she'd known the night she left that she'd gone further than she meant to. I told her I appreciated that, and I meant it. I also said, I'm not going to cover the 18,000. She nodded. She'd expected that. You want me to learn something, she said. I want you to already know it, but if you don't yet, then yeah. She asked me what I'd been thinking, the part she still couldn't get to the bottom of. Why hadn't I just laid out everything I knew about Amber and the FTC complaints right there at the Thanksgiving table, instead of asking questions she'd read as me being controlling? Because you'd already decided what my questions meant, I said. You'd already written the story where I was the obstacle. If I'd handed you a printed FTC report that afternoon, you would have told me I'd been surveilling your relationship. There is no version of that dinner where the information lands, because you weren't there to hear it. You were there to defend yourself. And that is not a conversation. That's a collision. She sat with that for a long moment. I leaned forward. I need to tell you something, and I need you to actually hear it all the way through before you say anything back. 8 years ago, when you turned 23, I set up an investment account in your name. Index funds, municipal bonds, a small position in a REIT I trusted. I've been putting money into it every quarter since then. Irene doesn't know the full amount. I was going to tell you at 35, or when you came to me with something real, something I could look at and say yes to with both hands. She stared at me. How much? Enough. I'll show you the statements when I decide you're ready for them. But I'll tell you it would have covered the buy-in, with money left over. Her eyes went wet, not dramatic. The kind of wet that comes when something you were certain about turns out to have been wrong in both directions at once. You had it the whole time, she said. I had it the whole time. Why didn't you just give it to me? Because it was never supposed to be about giving it to you. It was supposed to be about the moment you came to me with something worth giving it for. And you almost handed it to a man running a scam out of a UPS mailbox in Scottsdale. She pressed both hands flat against the table the way she used to when she was 7 years old, working out a math problem she hadn't quite gotten to the end of yet. I told her I wasn't giving her the account information that day. She was going to go home, take a breath, figure out how to close out the situation with Trevor, and come back to me in 90 days with something she actually wanted to build. A real plan, with real numbers. Numbers she'd worked out herself, without someone else filling in the blanks. She asked if I was serious. I asked when she'd ever known me not to be. She laughed. Not a full laugh, the kind that escapes before you can stop it. The first real sound she'd made since she sat down. She came back in April. 14 pages, projected expenses, 3-year runway, a licensing question she'd already called 2 attorneys about on her own. She wanted to open a specialty gift shop, curated inventory, local makers, an online wholesale component she'd researched herself. It wasn't flashy, it was solid. The kind of solid I could put my hands on and turn over and find no loose parts. We went through it together at that same kitchen table. I asked questions. She answered them, pushed back on 2 of mine where she thought I was wrong, and turned out to be right on 1 of them. I told her we'd talk about the account. She said she didn't need all of it. $40,000 to cover the first year's lease and initial inventory, and she'd made arrangements for the rest herself. I said, let me look at the lease terms. And that's where we left it, not with a ceremony and not with a speech. With 2 people doing the work a table apart from each other, the way things actually get built. I'm 61 years old. I built something and I watched it hold. I've made mistakes and paid for them out of my own pocket without asking anyone else to cover the loss. Because my father couldn't do that, and his father before him couldn't either. And somewhere in a family somebody has to decide that stops here. My daughter is 31 years old, and she is smart and stubborn in exactly the right proportions. And she almost gave $18,000 to a man who thought a Scottsdale mailbox counted as a business address. That's not a character flaw. That's a woman who wanted to prove something badly enough to stop asking the right questions. I know how that happens. I was 24 once. I was almost that stupid too. The difference was, I didn't have $40,000 sitting in an account waiting for me to grow up enough to deserve it. I had to build from nothing, and it cost me more than $18,000 and a Thanksgiving dinner to learn what she learned in 90 days flat. So no, I don't regret how this went. I feel like a man who built something that held up exactly when it was supposed to, and who never stopped adding to what he was always going to give anyway.